Apollo 11, 16 Things You May Not Know About the First Human Lunar Landing July 19, 2019 Facts about Apollo 11 and landing on the Moon. From how the astronauts went to the bathroom, to Neil Armstrong's promise to his grandmother and the plan if they got stranded. Apollo 11, 16 Things You May Not Know About the First Human Lunar Landing. NASA astronauts Neil Armstrong left and Buzz Aldrin right were the first two men on the Moon. Michael Collin in the middle was the pilot of the capsule that was orbiting the Moon while awaiting the return of the two other astronauts. Image, NASA 50 years ago, on July 20, 1969, there was a lunar landing and Neil Armstrong took his first step towards humanity. Armstrong commander, Buzz Aldrin lunar module pilot and Michael Collins command module pilot were the crew of what is often called the greatest achievement of mankind. People from all over the world tuned in to watch the big moment, holding their breath while the grainy black and white images were sent here. But how did this really happen? What preparation was needed and more things you might not know about. Here are the facts behind the first lunar landing in Apollo 11. 1. The Saturn V is still the largest and most powerful rocket ever built. The rocket was more than 100 meters high and burned 20 tons of fuel per second when it was launched. It was a beast, weighing 2,800 tons and generating 34.5 newtons of thrust at launch. 2. Where did the astronauts sleep and stay? Despite the huge rocket, the crew spent 8 days in a small compartment about the size of a large car. There were armchairs where they sat to take off, but the width of the compartment was 3.9 m maximum. 3. Where is the Apollo 11 module now? Nobody knows. Once a lunar module has been used, they are discarded and are likely to collide with the Moon, burn in the Earth's atmosphere, or just orbit the Sun. The location of the Apollo 11 module is unknown, but the former, like Apollo 5 and 6, burned. Apollo 11, also known as Snoopy, entered orbit around the Sun. Apollo 12 fell on the Moon. Apollo 13 as the Tom Hanks was used as a lifeboat. The Apollo 14 and 15 modules fell. We do not know where the Apollo 16 is. The Challenger, Apollo 17, also fell. 4. Do astronauts have life insurance instead of regular life insurance? The astronauts, unsure whether they would return or not, signed hundreds of envelopes before launch day. The envelopes were then marked with key dates and distributed to their families by a friend. The idea was that if they did not come back, they could be sold to raise funds. Robert Perlman told NPR, "These astronauts have signed autographs since the day they were announced as astronauts, and they knew that although eBay did not exist at that time, there was a market for such things. There was demand." In the 90s the envelopes appeared in auctions, with one of them reaching up to $30,000. 5. How were your space suits done? Space suits were custom made and cost around $79,000, approximately $370,000 in just today's money. The specialized costume was made by a company of brass and belts of Playtex. When the International Latex Corporation won the contract for the space suits of Apollo, according to the Smithsonian, there were very precise requirements, since even a slightly wrong point could nullify the whole process. 6. What were the first words of Neil Armstrong? Neil Armstrong said at 10:56 p.m. on July 20, 1969, "This is a small step for man, a great leap for mankind." There was some confusion when he failed to say a man before, but it became an iconic quote anyway. Some people say that, technically, the first word was Houston, but where is the romance in that? 7. The women who helped the Apollo 11 mission. NASA actually employed some women. There were female maths that basically acted as human computers. Not only were women, but many were of different races. If you watched Hidden Figures, a movie released in 2016, you will know the story. Katherine Johnson is most famous for her work in bringing the Apollo lunar module and the command module to the Moon. 8. Armstrong made a promise to his grandmother, Caroline Corse-Bader. Armstrong told the filmmakers that she made Armstrong promise not to leave if she were dangerous. She told the TV crews, "I think it's dangerous. I told Neil to look around and not leave if it did not look safe. He said he would not." 9. What did Armstrong and Aldrin leave on the Moon? The pair have left some things behind on the Moon, including a 50-centimeter silicon disc containing messages of peace from 73 of Earth's leaders. "Yes, the voice of the Queen of England is there in space," she said. "On behalf of the British people, I welcome the skill and courage that led man to the Moon. May this effort increase the knowledge and well-being of mankind." They also left the American flag, a replica of an olive branch in the name of peace, and a plaque that read, "Here the men of planet Earth set foot on the Moon." July 1969, DC. We have come in peace for all mankind. 10. How do astronauts go to the bathroom? One thing the astronauts did not leave on the moon was their feces. You may be wondering how the astronauts managed to go to the bathroom. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Mark Collins had no bathroom aboard the Apollo 11 spacecraft, so they had to use specialized equipment. The cuff roll-on was basically a rubber tube that was attached to a receiver and collection bag. The cape looked a bit like a condom, and the sleeve needed to be changed daily. If they had to do number 2, they had to use a plastic bag that captured the feces. According to NASA, the bag was then sealed, kneaded and rolled so they could keep it for later disposal on Earth. While on the moon the system was different. The astronauts wore pads, more or less like a diaper. 11. What did the moon smell like? Strange question, but the moon really smelled. Harrison Jack Schmitt was part of the Apollo 7 mission and said it smelled like used gunpowder. Apparently this was due to their noses reacting to the electrically charged dust on the moon. 12. Did they bring anything back from the moon? Yes, they brought it. Rocks, dust, moon samples were all in their packages that they brought back for scientists to study. 13. Did a porous pen save your lives? Yes. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins barely made it home when a switch broke. The circuit breaker that activated the ascent motor, that is, what pulled them from the moon, broke. Aldrin came up with a great solution and used his porous pen to push the button. 14. What happened when the team landed on Earth? All astronauts were quarantined so that scientists could examine them and ensure they did not contaminate the Earth. 15. How powerful was the computer used? Spoiler: not much. You would be forgiven for thinking that Apollo Guidance Computer (AGC) was an incremental computer, but it was actually less powerful than a calculator. Of course, in 1969 it was the top of the scale, but even weighing over 100 pounds, it wasn't as high-tech as a calculator. Independent reported that 2 calculators used in the exams were 140 to 350 times faster than AGC, and they also had more RAM. But the AGC did the job. 16. What would have happened if they got stuck on the moon? If things got worse, the idea was to leave astronauts on the moon, and President Richard Nixon even had a speech ready, in case of a moon disaster, which he would have read live on air. The protocol was simple: Mission Control would have disrupted all communication, so Nixon would have phoned the astronaut families before giving the speech. Fortunately we never had to hear the speech.